students, this is Ms. Tran. Today we are going to get started on how to write an effective introduction, particularly for our PBL projects. So before we get started, let's look at what goals we will be meeting today. And these two goals are going to be aligning with the Common Core State Standards on producing clear and coherent writing, as well as trying different approaches using the writing process in planning, revising, and editing or rewriting. Ultimately, our goal by the end of this lesson today and by the end of finishing our draft for the PBL project is to produce a clear and effective introductory paragraph as well as the other argumentative or informative paragraphs for our research essay. So let's jump right into it. So, I know that it's really crunch time right now. We're all taking SBAC testing and we're thinking, oh, what to do? Sometimes we get so inundated by everything that we have to think about and we can't seem to organize our time. Everything's crunch time, deadlines are approaching, and we need to find a way to condense everything down and get right to what we have to do. So there's no need to worry for that. Today I will be outlining the different strategies that we can use for an introduction. So, starting with the purpose of an introduction, we can say that a successful introduction does the following criteria. First, it provides a context for your arguments. Context meaning that there's some background information provided, but not too much, just like a little tidbit of information so that your reader is enticed by what you're going to be informing them throughout your essay, which ties into part 2. Your introduction attracts your audience's attention. You may do this by using a hook, a quotation, and so forth. And third, this varies between essays depending on which type of essay you're writing, but it's good to have in the back of your mind, maybe not necessarily for informative essay writing, but for research papers that are more aligned with argumentative writing, it should prepare the audience for your thesis, which isn't exactly applicable for the essay that we're composing today, but this is just to give you background information on the purpose of an introduction. Okay, so now I'm going to equip you with a few different strategies that you can use for your essay writing in your intro. But keep in mind that there are specific types of introductions to avoid. The first would be the very obvious one where students, they may just restate the question. So if you have an essay that you know you're going to be writing about on feudalism, for instance, it wouldn't be very effective to say, this paper that I'm composing today is going to be discussing the elements of feudalism. Very boring, it's straight to the point, but it's not effective, it's not an attention grabber. Avoid that kind of starter for your essay. Another one that should be avoided would be the typical dictionary definition where, yeah, you might introduce some new information such as the definition of a guild is an organization that protects the rights of people and so forth. But again, it's just laying the information out there. It's not really giving anyone anything to bite off of, to really get interested and immerse themselves into. Number 3 and 4 kind of tie together, broad sweeping statements and cliches. So those are the types of statements that you've heard over and over again. They're overused. They turned into idioms that just don't really grab your attention, such as, since the dawn of time, kings and queens have reigned the towns and cities of England, and so forth. Those are the kinds of statements that we want to avoid in any kind of essay. And of course, number 5, unrelated examples. Those are simply just fillers in an essay where you're trying to fill in maybe some information about this and that, but it doesn't really get straight to the point of what you're going to be discussing in your essay. So again, avoid these types of introductions, and now we're going to jump into the different strategies that we can employ in our writing. So, one effective hook that you can use for an introduction is figurative language. Figurative language, as we've worked with before, uses different words and expressions that have meanings that are different than the literal interpretation. This could include similes. So remember, similes are types of comparisons that use like or as. Personification, embodying human qualities to inanimate objects. An onomatopoeia, that would be a great one for topics such as weaponry, technology, perhaps even health or education. The sounds of war maybe can start your essay with a boom or bang and so forth. So these are all different creative ways where you can add some flair to the start of your essay. Another one that would be great for this research paper is using historical information. Historical information gives a sketch of what person or events you're going to be discussing in your paper, and it can set the stage for how you plan on writing about the who, when, what, where, and how throughout the essay outline. Adding on, we also have a provocative quotation. So this is a third method that you can use for your hook. A quotation would be using the words of another person to start your essay. So maybe you have a really riveting quote, a really interesting fact that you found in a book or an article, and you want to use that at the start of your essay. And that is a great way to start off. So keep that in mind. And lastly, although the list is not limited to just these options for hook, these are just to help you get started. A vivid anecdote. So another word for anecdote would be a short or amusing or interesting story that you may have found about a king, a queen, a court jester, or so forth, that you may want to use at the beginning of your essay. Maybe it's a part of a speech. Something of that sort can really act as a great attention grabber. Okay, so now I've provided a lot of information about the different strategies to use, as well as different strategies that we shouldn't exactly use in an essay. How exactly are we going to employ this in our writing? Let's take a look. So, an example of an introduction should fulfill these three elements, and here they are. So the first is that we should start with a shocking and riveting or interesting fact about the subject. Those could be any of the methods that we just outlined together, whether it's a vivid anecdote, a quote, figurative language, historical background information. All of those definitely work in composing the hook of your story. The second part is to follow through by transitioning from the fact and by explaining or discussing that quote or that story or whatever type of hook that you used right at the start of your essay in your own words. And this transition should just simply summarize it, but also lead the reader. Hold the reader's hand and mind in terms of how he or she is weaving through your essay. And lastly, write a transition sentence that introduces the who and what of your subject. Now, the transition sentence is very important because this is what will be guiding your reader throughout the essay. What you say in your last sentence will guide them to the who and what component of your paper. And likewise, when you compose your who and what component of the informative paragraph, you're going to be introducing the when and where, the how and why, and so forth. So let's see this example in working motion. So here we have an example about the Black Death. Take a look. In blue, we have it aligning with the first step. Start with a shocking or riveting quote about your subject. Here we have our hook. The Black Death killed more than 20 people in Europe, almost 1/3 of the continent's population. Now, what kind of hook does this align with? I would say it would be a riveting quotation. So perhaps I found this quote from a really interesting book or article. And it could also count as historical background information. So you see, there isn't exactly a clear-cut method of saying this is a vivid anecdote or this is a quotation. Some of them kind of blend together as one. As we can see in this highlighted blue example right here, this could count as either historical background information or a riveting quotation derived from a book or article. Step number 2, you're going to transition from the fact by explaining or discussing it in your own words. Okay, so we have that fact that 20 million people in Europe were wiped out by the Black Death. Let's see what is written in red. Explain it in your own words. We see that the horrifying effects of the Black Death that eliminated a massive year's population had devastating effects on the people. Widespread consequences left the people desperate for a cure that could not be sought. And that was true. During the Black Death, people were running up and down all over the place, scared for their lives, blaming their sins for what was going on in their towns and their homes at that time. And there was no cure for the Black Death, right? And lastly, you're going to write a transition sentence that introduces the who and what. And that is written in green. With that said, people of Europe were ill-equipped. So that answers the who, people of Europe, for what? The Black Death. As its effects persisted to kill people on an international scale. So the Black Death wasn't just focused in the small towns of England. It expanded to other continents, including Asia, Africa, and so forth. It was something that could not be stopped at the time. Okay? So this is to give you a head start on how you will be writing and composing your essay. And again, these are strategies to use that will help you outline the framework in which you will be using to complete this project. So I hope you found that lecture informative. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of your essay and how things will turn out. And this ends today's lecture. Thank you.